Hello and welcome to the channel. Today, I'm taking you back to the 13th of April 2011, where in Darden, Tennessee, 20-year-old nursing student Holly Bobo would be taken from her home. But before we get into this particularly interesting case, if you have an interest in true crime stories and are here for the first time, please leave a like, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell so you never miss an upload. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for your continued support. Now without further ado, let's get into today's video. Holly Bobo was born on the 12th of October 1990 in Darden, Tennessee to parents Dana and Karen Bobo. Holly had one older brother, Clint Bobo. She was also the cousin of Whitney Duncan, a popular American country music singer and songwriter. At the time, Holly was studying nursing at the University of Tennessee and living with her parents. She was described as a sweet, shy girl by her friends. She was hardworking and focused on her studies. Holly also had a boyfriend, Drew Scott. She led a normal, quiet life. However, this was all going to change on the morning of the 13th of April, 2011. At 4:30 AM, Holly woke up to begin studying for an upcoming nursing exam which was scheduled to take place at 8 AM. She briefly spoke to her father at 5:30 AM. He offered her money for fuel before leaving for work. Shortly after, Holly's mother woke up, where she prepared breakfast and lunch for Holly before leaving for her teaching job at around 7 AM. Just before 7:30, Drew Scott, who was out hunting turkey on Holly's grandmother's property at the time, called her as there was confusion as to whether he had permission to hunt on the property, although the matter was resolved and it was confirmed that he did have permission to be there. Around 10 minutes later, one of Holly's neighbours were alerted to a scream which they heard from the Bobo residence. They tried to alert Karen but were only able to leave a message at her work. Although just 5 minutes later, Clint Bobo was awoken to dogs barking outside the home. Apparently, he had not been disturbed by the screaming the neighbours heard moments earlier. When he looked outside his window to investigate, he noticed that Holly's car was still parked outside. He attempted to call his mother, but like the neighbours, he was unable to reach her. Clint then raised the window blinds and saw his sister, together with a man dressed in camouflage. He noticed the pair were kneeling down and talking to each other, but he wasn't able to make out what they were saying. He assumed the man in camouflage to be Drew Scott, as he was aware of Drew's planned hunting trip at his grandmother's property. While he wasn't sure what was happening, he did hear Holly shout, "No, why?" at the man. This led Clint to believe that Drew had decided to end things with Holly. However, at this point, Karen had received the message the neighbours had left earlier and called Clint. Clint explained that Holly and Drew were outside, talking when Karen bluntly told him, "Clint, that's not Drew. Get a gun and shoot him." Clint responded with, "You want me to shoot Drew?" still believing the man to be Holly's boyfriend. Clint failed to act on his mother's instruction, as he didn't feel calling 911 over his sister and her boyfriend breaking up to be something worth troubling the police over. Instead, he decided to check on the pair again. Only when he did, he saw Holly and the camouflaged man walking away into the woods. It would be the last time he would see his sister alive. Soon after, Karen would call her son again and demand that he call 911. This time he acted, but rather than call 911, Clint picked up a loaded pistol and headed towards the garage. There, he spotted a puddle of blood by Holly's car, although Clint was still convinced that the man was Drew and that the blood was probably from a turkey that Drew had shot. It was only when the neighbour's mother arrived home and told Clint of the screams she heard. It was at this point Clint realised the severity of the situation and contacted 911. It wasn't long before police arrived and began investigating. Holly's mobile phone records showed at 8:17 AM, Holly was heading north towards a wooded area near the I-40. Karen arrived home at 8:10 AM, the same time that the police had arrived. Karen told police officers to put up roadblocks to stop outgoing traffic, but they denied her requests. Karen claimed that police officers, as well as neighbours, were instead allowed to move freely around the crime scene, which she believed contaminated the area, although the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation would deny these claims. Police wouldn't begin searching the woods for a whole 2 hours after arriving at the scene, as they were waiting for sniffer dogs to arrive and a helicopter to search overhead. Sniffer dogs were able to pick up Holly's scent and proceeded into the woods, but as they approached the logging road, the dogs lost Holly's scent. Police believed that the person who took Holly may have had a weapon which he used to coerce Holly into the woods, where he took her to a vehicle parked on the logging road, put her inside, and drove off. 2 days later, police searched an area close to Bible Hill Road, where they found a lunchbox which they believed belonged to Holly. A further 2 days later, a local farmer would find papers belonging to Holly, which contained her name, address, and telephone number. One of Holly's friends would also find her phone in a culvert. The following month, a discarded SIM card was found by a co-worker of Clint Bobo's. This turned out to belong to Holly. When police asked Clint for a description of the man who led Holly into the woods, he described the man to be approximately 5'10" to 6 feet tall, weighing between 180 to 200 pounds, with dark hair sticking out from under the cap he was wearing. Initially, lead investigator Terry Dicus interviewed Zachary Adams. Zachary appeared on the police's radar early on, as he had a history of violence including assault, domestic abuse, and drug possession. Adams would tell police that at the time of Holly's disappearance, he was at home with his girlfriend and brother, Dylan. The pair would back up Zachary's alibi. He also said that both he and Dylan would drive to pick up their friend, Shane Austin, at approximately 10 a.m. Zachary stated that he became aware of a huge police presence after witnessing police vehicles passing down the interstate. Surveillance footage was reviewed, and police found what they believed to be Dylan's car off Highway 641 in Parsons, Tennessee, at around 11 a.m. on the day Holly disappeared. Furthermore, after reviewing Zachary's phone records, police found that his phone pinged near his residence at 8:28 a.m. Dicus also claimed that Zachary passed a polygraph test. It was determined, therefore, that Zachary couldn't have been involved with Holly's disappearance. Attention then swiftly moved towards another individual, Terry Britt. Terry was a registered sex offender who was convicted of multiple rapes. He also lived close to Holly's home. He fit the physical description given to police by Clint Bobo. Furthermore, Clint said to police that Terry's voice sounded similar to that of the man in camouflage on the day Holly was taken. Also, he had a track record of stalking young, blonde women. When police spoke to Terry, he told them that he had been out shopping for a bathtub with his wife. However, police learned that Terry's wife had in fact been at work that morning and that Terry had asked her to come home early. They supplied a handwritten receipt for the purchase of the bathtub, although the store they claimed to have purchased the tub from were unable to locate a record of the sale. Despite this, Terry would not be charged by police, but he was also not ruled out. In 2013, 2 years after Holly vanished, Terry Dicus would be taken off the case due to tunnel vision and lack of objectivity. There would be no further developments in the case until January 2014, where Dylan Adams would be arrested on an unrelated weapons charge. He was facing up to 10 years in prison for this charge, but was given a plea deal where he would have to live with a retired police officer, Dennis Benjamin, in exchange for having to spend any time in jail. Dylan was considered mentally disabled, and despite he and Dennis Benjamin not knowing each other, Dylan accepted this rather odd plea deal. Approximately 5 weeks later, Benjamin contacted 911, where he stated that Dylan was ready to confess as to what happened to Holly Bobo. Dylan told police that apparently he had seen Holly at Zach's home and that Holly was sitting in a chair wearing a pink shirt. He also told investigators that his brother was wearing green Crocs, a black cut-off sleeve shirt, and camouflage shorts. Furthermore, another individual, Jason Autry, was also in the home at the time. Finally, Dylan explained that Zach told him that he had raped Holly and recorded this on his mobile phone. Now armed with Dylan's statement, on the 28th of February 2014, police were able to obtain a search warrant for Zach's home. Although it should be noted that Dylan would later go on to recant his statement after claiming that he had been coerced into saying the things that he had said. Furthermore, the recording in question has also never been found. On the 5th of March 2014, Zachary Adams was indicted on aggravated kidnapping and the first-degree murder of Holly Bobo. Jason Autry would also be indicted on the same charges on the 29th of April 2014. He would protest his innocence. Police would also question Shane Austin after phone records showed Zachary had been in contact with Shane on several occasions on the day Holly was taken. Prosecutors offered Shane total immunity in exchange for providing information as to where Holly's body was disposed and for testifying against Zachary. Shane agreed to this, but he was unable to lead investigators to where Holly was disposed, or perhaps he was unwilling to. He was also unable to give them any credible leads, leading to the immunity deal being pulled, although prosecutors reserved the right to charge Shane at any time. The following month, a woman named Sandra King came forward with information, claiming that her friend Jeffrey Piercy had a video which he showed Sandra, showing a young woman tied up and crying. She believed that the woman on the video was Holly Bobo. She didn't watch the whole video, but she believed it showed Holly being sexually assaulted. She also told investigators that Zachary Adams could also be seen in the footage. It was claimed that Jeffrey came into possession of the video after his brother Mark had given it to him. Allegedly, it was Mark who was the one recording the scenes Sandra witnessed. A phone call was staged between Sandra and Jeffrey, where during the call Sandra said, "That video of Holly, if it had been you, I would have watched it." Jeffrey simply replied with, "I know." Both Jeffrey and Mark would be charged with tampering with evidence and accessory after the fact in Holly Bobo's murder. In July 2014, during a preliminary hearing, Jeffrey would say that he was unable to clearly hear what Sandra was saying to him on the phone, as he was driving with his windows down at the time. He also told the court that the woman he thought Sandra was referring to in the sex tape was his ex-wife. This was because Jeffrey's ex-wife was also named Holly. Prosecutors confiscated both Mark and Jeffrey's phones in order to locate the recording, but as I mentioned earlier, this was never found. The case would then take a dramatic turn 2 months later. On the 7th of September 2014, a bucket would be stumbled upon by a group of ginseng hunters. Upon turning the bucket, they found a set of car keys, makeup, an inhaler, and pens in a small bag. Moments after discovering the items, they found a human skull and partial human remains scattered nearby. The skull found by the hunters contained a hole in the back of the head, consistent with a gunshot. After the police were notified, the items that were discovered, as well as the remains, were determined to belong to Holly Bobo. After over 3 years of searching, the young girl was now found. Dylan Adams would be arrested by police on the 17th of September 2014 for tampering with evidence. He would also admit to his involvement in the rape of Holly. Dylan would be charged with 2 counts of rape and evidence tampering on the 14th of October 2014. That same month, the charges against Mark and Jeffrey Piercy were dropped after they were unable to find the alleged sex tape and also being unable to prove any link between them and any of the other suspects in the case. Shane Austin would be found dead in a hotel room in Florida in February 2015. Shane had consistently denied any involvement, and his attorney stated that Shane was torn up about being connected to the Bobo case. Dylan Adams would be indicted on first-degree murder, kidnapping and rape charges in May 2015. In 2016, a .32 caliber revolver was recovered, which was believed to be the murder weapon. Victor Dinsmore alleged that Shane Austin had traded the gun with him in exchange for 12 morphine pills in 2011. Initially, he gave the gun to his wife as a form of protection, but after becoming concerned that the gun may have been connected to the Bobo case, He dumped the weapon in a creek near Joe Holiday Road. He then moved with his family to Indiana soon after. He wouldn't report the gun to police until 2016, where he helped investigators find the location of the creek. Police also considered Dinsmore as a person of interest due to his close proximity to where Holly's remains were discovered, as well as a prior rape conviction. However, police would end up giving Dinsmore federal immunity. Zachary Adams' trial began in September 2017. The prosecution had to rely solely on circumstantial evidence, as well as witness testimony, as there was no DNA evidence or forensic evidence which could link Zachary to Holly's murder. At the time of the trial, Jason Autry had arranged a deal with the prosecution team where he would act as a key witness against Zachary in exchange for federal immunity. Jason told the court that while he was not involved in Holly's murder, he did help Zachary to dispose of her body. Jason said that he tried to contact Zachary at around 8:45 AM, where Zachary said he was busy. However, Zachary would later call Jason back, where he would ask him for help at Shane's home. When Jason arrived, he noticed a burn barrel which had been set on fire, as well as Zachary standing in the yard. He had a gun holstered on his side. Dylan Adams was also there, shirtless. It was then that Zachary told Jason that he needed help with disposing of Holly's body. In the back of Zachary's truck, Holly was placed there, where she was wrapped in a blanket. The initial plan was that they would drive to a bridge along the Tennessee River near the I-40, where they would gut Holly's body so that when she was thrown in, she wouldn't float. However, they shockingly discovered that Holly was in fact still alive. Upon realizing this, Zachary would shoot her in the back of the head, place her body back into the truck, and drop Jason off back home. Jason said that Zachary would tell him that he hid Holly's body near Kelly Ridge. However, this was strange as Holly's remains were in fact found at a different location altogether. Jason asked Zachary why he had been at Holly's house in the first place. Jason claimed that Zachary told him he went there because Clint Bobo wanted to learn how to make meth, only for Holly to find out. Clint has always strongly denied this. Jason continued, saying that he, with Zachary, Shane and Dylan, later that day went to purchase drugs. He claimed that Zach had asked him to kill Dylan in an attempt to prevent him from revealing what he did to Holly. Initially, Jason declined, but after some convincing, agreed. He took Dylan to a fishing spot on the Tennessee River, where he planned to murder Dylan, but changed his mind when he was seen by another boat. At that point, Jason decided that he couldn't go through with it. The alibi Zachary provided in the early stages of the investigation was called into question when his ex-girlfriend Rebecca Arp took the stand. She told the court that after his arrest in 2014, she changed her story, claiming that at the time she was afraid of Zachary. This was because of his previous history with drug addiction and violence. She said that Zachary only mentioned Holly after she disappeared, and on the day of the kidnap, a report came on TV where Zachary and Shane commented that they'll never be able to find her. However, when pressed by the defense, she admitted that it was possible he may have made this comment the day after the report. She also said that after the pair had a fight, Zachary threatened to tie up Rebecca like he did Holly, and that no one would ever see her again. She alleged that Zachary and a friend, John Mitchell, had a blue plastic bin and said that everything was ready to go to dispose of Holly's body. However, they later said that it was leftover material from making meth and that they were only joking. She then testified to the court that Zachary had lied about his alibi. He said to the investigators that he woke up at 10 AM on the morning Holly was taken, but Rebecca claimed that Zachary hadn't fallen asleep, and he actually called her at 6:30 AM to tell her that he and Victor Dinsmore were going to haul scrap. She suspected that he might be lying, as he called her from Dylan's phone and not his own, although Dylan's phone records showed that there was no call made to Rebecca's phone on the day she alleged. The defense were adamant that Zachary Adams was completely innocent. While this wouldn't be surprising to learn, as it's their job to defend the accused, they were genuine in their belief. They claimed that Dylan Adams' confession was coerced by Dennis Benjamin, the retired police officer who Dylan moved in with as part of his plea bargain deal. They also said that Dylan's physical appearance didn't match that of the camouflaged man Clint said took Holly. He was too small and less built than the person Clint described. Furthermore, the defense added that Zachary's phone records showed that it pinged in totally different areas, meaning that Jason's claims that Zachary had told him he went there to teach Clint how to make meth must have been false. They suggested that Jason made this up in order to achieve a reduced sentence. Their attention then turned to accusing Terry Britt. They reminded the court that Clint confirmed the voice sample played to him that he recognised belonged to Terry Britt. Additionally, they said that Terry was the only person that had not been ruled out as being the one whose palm print was found on Holly's car. Regarding the camouflaged man, the defense argued that Terry Britt, as well as Shane Austin, matched the physical description given by Clint, and not Zachary, Dylan, or Jason. However, at the time, Shane had short red hair, not the long dark hair that Clint described. Lastly, they would tell of the criminal history of Terry, as well as his habit for stalking young, blonde women. The criticism continued. The defense repeatedly stated that evidence was not turned over to them. This included supposed DNA evidence, which was claimed to have been found at Zachary's home, despite no DNA evidence being produced at the trial, never mind presented to the defense. The TBI even suspended its investigation of Holly's murder case after the district attorney, Matt Stowe, accused them, as well as other law enforcement agencies, of misconduct. The TBI would reopen the investigation when Jennifer Nichols was appointed special prosecutor after Matt Stowe recused himself. Despite the circumstantial evidence, the criticism of the investigation, as well as the arguments from the defense, on the 22nd of September 2017, Zachary Adams was found guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was also sentenced to an additional 50 years for the kidnapping and rape convictions. On the 22nd of January 2018, Dylan Adams entered an Alford plea, which allowed him to maintain his innocence while accepting that the evidence was strong enough to convict him. He was sentenced to 15 years for facilitation of first-degree murder and 35 years for especially aggravated kidnapping. These sentences are being served concurrently and without parole. Due to the plea deal cut by the prosecution team, Jason Autry had to wait until September 2020 before his court appearance, where he pled guilty to lesser charges of facilitation to commit especially aggravated kidnapping and solicitation to commit first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, but as he spent much of this time already behind bars, he was set free. However, by December 2020, Jason Autry was arrested on drug and gun charges after he was found walking in a field wearing just his pajamas and wielding a gun. His vehicle was searched, where it contained ammunition and methamphetamines. Zachary Adams' attorney filed an appeal in February 2020, citing 56 mistakes apparently made at the trial. This includes allegations of a biased judge and unfair jury. This appeal was denied on the 11th of August 2020. This all but ended any hopes for Zachary to avoid spending life behind bars. Terry Britt, who also testified at Holly Bobo's trial, was in prison at the time he took the stand for attempted rape and kidnapping charges. There were rumours that Terry was released on parole in 2018. However, he was actually transferred from state prison to federal prison to serve jail time for separate gun possession charges. He's due for release in 2026. The Holly Bobo Act was passed on the 10th of March 2020 and came into effect on the 1st of January 2021. This act expanded the Tennessee's Endangered Alert System to include missing or endangered young adults under the age of 21. At the time of Holly's kidnapping, Amber Alerts were only issued to those under the age of 17, meaning Holly's disappearance was not subject to one. The lack of concrete evidence in this case will always have people asking whether the right call was made. Many, including Holly's parents, certainly believe that justice was served and that Holly's killer is where he belongs. That being said, There are other theories out there that I didn't go into detail over, but are out there regardless. This includes one theory that Holly was an informant for the FBI, but there's no evidence to suggest that this was the case. There was also involvement with psychics, as is usually the case in cases such as these. Clint Bobo, Holly's brother, was also criticised for his delayed response to his mother's instructions to shoot the camouflaged man. While it's reasonable to ask why Clint failed to act, or why he was awoken by dogs barking, but not by his own sister's screams, we'll never know. However, I'm sure Clint asks himself these questions every day, and as they say, hindsight is 20/20. What do you think? Was justice carried out? Did they get the wrong man? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you like true crime content and would like to see more, please like, share and subscribe to the channel, as well as hitting the notification bell so you never miss an upload. While the aim will always be to upload videos on a weekly basis, unfortunately things in real life have been very busy, which have meant that I've had to delay working on cases that I want to cover. But I will continue to keep you updated on my discussion page, so check that out. Thank you for your continued support. Take care, and goodbye. For now.